So we'll carry it a little further from there. How would you enhance the quality of life, and what would be some of those enhancements that you would see in the city for me?
Well, there's three themes as CEO that I would lead with, and these are what and why themes. The first theme is that we create a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship, and that would be a culture both in government where people are free to be innovative and creative and to have good ideas and to execute those ideas, but also create a culture of that within our business community where people feel like that this is the best place in America to start a business. Then the second theme is that efficient, effective leadership has accountability and transparency. So that what I mean by that is that each department sets a standard of excellence, they measure their performance to that standard of excellence, and then they're transparent to the 250,000 shareholders as to whether they're measuring up or not. And then the third theme is that we have a quality of life for everyone. When I've traveled the city and talked with people all over the city, what I've discovered is that our 65 and over crowd are really pretty pleased. They have great hospitals, they have good living quarters, and they even have more coming. More have just been announced that they're going to build. So you haven't heard a lot of complaint or concern from them. And our 41 to 65 group, similar. Great place to raise a family, low cost of living. Most of them are satisfied with their schools at some level, and so they're pretty pleased. Now, do they want improvement? Sure, but overall they're pretty pleased. Where I've heard the most complaint from both the parents and our citizens is that in that 20 and 30-year-old group, who would say to me on the street, Eric, there's nothing for me here. You know, when I leave, I'm not going to come back because there's just nothing for me in Fort Wayne. There's not job opportunities for me. There's not the kind of quality of life that I would like, and etc. So one of the hows is to use and invest our light lease money alongside the banks, and be a source of the banks give us $70 million out of $100 million in projects. We would lend $15 million. This would attract private equity back to Fort Wayne in a way that is not being done currently. There's not a lot of private equity groups that I know of that are going to invest in Fort Wayne and invest $30 million and $100 million of projects because the risk is too high and the reward is too low. So one of the plans that I would have is to stimulate $100 million of new projects by having a good lending process. What that does for us as a city is it increases quality of life. We get to make a return on our investment and get the money back in a few years when they are sold to a REIT or they're refinanced.
A REIT being a real estate investment trust.
Who like to buy these kind of projects. Then we also get an increase in tax base because these are all private projects, so they're going to pay taxes.
Well, walk me back. Define any one of these projects as, and then walk me through the process. Just give
you an example.
New apartment building downtown,
Sure.
A hockey rink in the center of town.
Sure. Well, first of all, Jim, let me say this. It needs to be driven by the private sector. You know, first of all, they're putting their capital at risk, and second of all, they know what they're doing. They know how to make money, and they're not going to put their capital at risk at projects that won't have a chance for a high level chance for success.
Understood, but the ballpark would never have been built if it hadn't relied upon private capital.
Well,
solely.
Let me give you an example. Someone has come to me and expressed some level of interest in putting an apartment complex, affordable apartment complex downtown. So let's just use that as an example. And let's just assume that that's a $30 million project. The banks will lend $21 million of that 30. So that leaves a $9 million gap. Private equity will not put $9 million into a project. There's too much risk and too little reward.
Understood.
And what's happened is the banks used to loan a lot more than that. They've swung the pendulum way over here now, and so we have this gap between what private industry or private equity is willing to risk and what the banks are willing to loan. So what we could do as a city is lend $4.5 million, let's say, and we lend that money to the private equity group, and they put in their $4.5 million of equity. So we are a pari passu with the bank. That is, we are lending alongside the bank, and we've lent now a total of roughly $25.5 million, and then they lend their $4.5 million, and a project goes up in our city. This is a project that will pay taxes, that will employ people in a down economy, that we'll make a return on, and that will be a win-win situation for the banks and the private equity group. I think it's pretty exciting.
Right, is that the redevelopment commission's job?
Well, I certainly think you can partner with that, with the redevelopment commission, but we also have now a $38 million, what I call $38 million CapEx fund. That is a fund that's available for us to encourage investment into our city.
So it pairs side by side with redevelopment, which has its various taxing districts and its area in which it can operate in its mandates. So essentially it's a revolving loan fund.
Correct. It's an investment fund. I mean, right now we have that money invested in stocks and bonds, and it's at risk every day. Whether we realize it or not, we put that money at risk every day that we have it in the stock market. And in this particular case, if we have a natural disaster that takes the stock market down, for example, then we lose value, but what did we really gain for that? Where if we make an investment, and not an investment because it is lending, but if we lend the money to a private equity group, at least we see projects that go up in our city, there's value there that we can tangibly see. And so we're going to take risk either way when we invest this money. And I'm just suggesting that there's ways that we can do it. It could enhance our quality of life, attract and retain jobs and talent in Fort Wayne, and then be a benefit to us for many, many, many years to come as a city.
The city is, in some cases, done that, and that's what they're trying to do at Harrison Square. Is it relatively the same thing?
No, I think they're different in this respect. The Harrison Square, the city became an equity player in that. And that's a different tact than I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is that we lend the money, so we are a lender, not an equity player. It's a big difference in both risk and reward.
True, but once I was trying to borrow some money for some of my real estate activities, and everybody whom I approached wanted to be an equity player as opposed to just a lender. And equity in the sense that they wanted to be first in line should I have gone belly up. How would you protect the city's investment if a $30 million facility goes up and or like, was it the Marriott? Was that the one down? No, it was the Hilton downtown that went through a number of a foreclosure, bankruptcy, and then a sale again. How do you protect our $7 million investment in a new construction if the corporate entity that's built it doesn't properly manage the facility or the risk?
Well, yeah,
if we're just a lender.
Yeah, that's always a risk. The first step to anything when you lend is to make sure that you have a good credit risk, is to make sure that you're dealing with a good partner. Mm-hmm. And so when partnering with the banks, there's no doubt that the banks are going to be, as well as we are going to be motivated to make sure that we have a good partner. The other thing to keep in mind is that since they have $4.5 million in this project, they're the most at risk. That is, they're not, usually do not desire, nor are they very happy when they start losing money.
Right.
So they're not likely to lose $4.5 million of their own money before they get to us.
Right.